Welcome back. A short time ago, I was scrolling through social media and I saw this comedian that I've seen. He's a British comedian. And usually he's pretty good at roasting people in the British sense. But I guess he was taking questions from the audience. And somebody asked him, "How did you deal with the death of your mother?" And he stopped for a second. And he looked. He said, "Grief is the price we pay for love." He said it would be sad if it wasn't so sad. And it got me thinking, not just in love of the human beings in our life and our partnerships and our friends. What about our sport? What about our goals? So I thought I'd put something out there today. So let's get right into it. Today, I want to tell you something that may change the way you look at pain. What if the worst feeling you've ever experienced was never your enemy? What if grief isn't proof that there's something wrong, but it's actually proof that something beautiful happened? And I don't know if you're like me, but pretty much I think we all spend most of our life trying to avoid pain, trying to avoid loss, trying to avoid heartbreak, and try to avoid endings. But what if the absence of grief would actually mean the absence of love, of fulfillment, of working towards big things, of going all in? Because you can't lose what you never cared about. You cannot mourn what never mattered. You cannot ache for something that never changed you. I heard it said once that grief is love with nowhere to go. So today, it isn't an episode about sadness. It's an episode about courage. The courage to love, the courage to care, and the courage to chase dreams, knowing one day every one of them will end. Because every race has a finish line. Every season ends. Every relationship changes. Every child grows up. Every parent eventually leaves the planet. Every chapter will close. And somehow, that doesn't make life tragic. It makes it precious. Because temporary things teach us permanent lessons. So why do we fear grief more than death? We aren't actually afraid of grief, I believe. We're afraid of what grief says about us. What if I never recover? What if I never smile again? What if life is never the same? And here's the truth. It will not be. But the other truth is that's okay. Because grief changes you. But so does love. Love expands you. Grief reshapes you. Neither leaves you the same. Our culture teaches us that healing means returning to who we were. But no, I don't think so. Healing is actually becoming somebody new. Someone who carries the memory instead of being crushed by it. There was a quote I heard: healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering without falling apart. So the truth is, love and loss are twins. Every single meaningful relationship comes with a hidden contract. And that is one day, one of you will say goodbye first. And absolutely no one likes to think about that. But pretending it isn't true doesn't protect you. It just prevents you from really, truly being in the moment, being present, and appreciating the time you have today. Imagine knowing this hug could be the last. This run with your training partner could be the last. This coffee with your parents could be the last. This game coaching your child, it could be the last. Do you think you'd be more present? I'd go on a limb and say absolutely. Grief teaches presence. Long before loss arrives, every goodbye teaches us how valuable every hello really was. Working with athletes, I understand that sport teaches grief better than almost anything. Every athlete understands grief, not just because people die, but because identities do. Careers end. The injury changes everything. The championship slips away. The Olympic dream disappears. The body changes, and the team moves on. And then one day the jersey comes off for the last time. People think that athletes only grieve people. No, athletes grieve. They grieve versions of themselves. The runner that could run faster. The hockey player that was before the concussion. The swimmer before the injury. The young body, the old dream. And here's the truth. Every level you reach requires grieving the person who used to be. Growth always asks you to build to bury an old identity. You know, all this sounds sad, but the truth is, like I said in the beginning, it would be so sad if it wasn't so sad. The truth is, there's this quote I have, and somebody really kindly painted me a picture and wrote my quote on it, and I look at it every day. If you can't meet yourself at the bottom, you'll never get to meet yourself at the top. And in the reverse of that is the only way you'll ever get to meet yourself at the bottom is if you risk all in. You risk the dream. You risk going for that, taking the chance, telling the person how you feel, going like declaring your dream of the Olympics. See, life was never meant to be monotone. Life was meant to be highs and lows. And yes, the bigger thing you go for, the bigger the grief when it's over. But honestly, what kind of a life are you going to live if you never even try? The meaning of life is risking everything for a dream that no one but you can see. Sometimes what dies isn't the dream. It's the version of you that can no longer carry it. You know, the truth is we grieve more than people. We grieve our childhood, our first home, friendships, pets. You know, when you sign up for bringing a pet into your family, you're signing up for one of the greatest heartbreaks of your life because they do get to spend their whole life with you, but you don't get to spend your whole life with them. businesses, careers, health, marriage, divorce, empty nest, retirement, dreams that actually never happened, versions of ourselves that we lost. Every transition creates grief. The problem is sometimes we call ourselves weak for feeling it, which is insane, right? You're human. Grief doesn't always cry. Sometimes it looks like anger. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like numbness. Sometimes anxiety. Sometimes working too much. Sometimes scrolling your phone for hours trying not to think. Sometimes training harder because stopping means feeling. Sometimes helping everyone else so you don't have to sit with the pain from your life. What we refuse to grieve, we are forced to carry. Let's talk about the psychology of grief. And here's something incredibly powerful. Grief isn't something to solve. Interesting. I used to say we have to feel what we feel when we're feeling it, and we have to feel our way all the way through it, right to the end, because the freedom's only found in the feeling. It's not something to solve. It's something to integrate. You don't graduate from grief. You grow around it. Imagine dropping a stone into a tree. You ever seen this? Tree doesn't remove the stone. It just grows around it year after year. And eventually the wound becomes part of the strength. And that's us. We do not erase loss. We expand around it. And that expansion is wisdom. The truth is, had I not gone through really incredibly hard things as a child, I wouldn't be here right now recording this. Because empathy and compassion is built through an understanding, through an overcoming of a pain, but not taking that and bitterly going after the world with it, but switching it and shifting it to the understanding that when you see it in another person who's going through something similar to what you went through, you just want to help. And you have an understanding because you've been through it that nobody can take that pain away. But you probably went through it and you were all alone. So when you recognize another person, you understand that I can't take your pain away. But what I can do is make sure you don't feel alone when you're in pain. So the goal isn't to have smaller grief. The goal is to become a bigger person. Honestly, you will survive the grief you're going through. But if you never take the chance to feel the love, go for the dream, give everything you got at the risk of failure, then you'll be left with a shallow life. Here's some ways. Let's talk about 5 ways to carry grief instead of fighting it. First off, just stop asking why. You could just shift that conversation to what now. Try to honor that feeling. You don't have to express it everywhere you go, just when it's safe. And you can turn the valve off when it's not safe, and you can go into places and crack it open when you need to. But honor, tell stories, say their name, celebrate memories, keep the traditions alive. So I'm just feeling a tiny bit emotional here because somebody I know lost their dog a little while back. And this dog was it was definitely a spirit animal. Came to this person in the hardest time in their life and had been through the whole life. And in this dog's latter years, it's starting to get sick. this dog's human was going through a tough time, so this dog just stayed and stayed and stayed and fought until the moment it couldn't anymore. It waited till its human had its feet on the ground and things were going good, and then it passed. And when they came in, it told me all these stories. It was just beautiful. How the dog stole pizza and yeah, loved to do zoomies on the beach. Even in his old age, that's the only place. You see, don't avoid. Tell the stories. Feel before fixing. You don't need another productivity hack. You need permission to cry. If you can't meet yourself on the bottom, you will never get to meet yourself on your top. And you have to feel your way through it all the way, right to the end. Let grief deepen your gratitude. Loss reminds us that nothing is guaranteed. Everything is borrowed. Every moment is precious. Don't waste your time. Continue loving. The most courageous act on this earth is to love deeply, knowing that one day you will lose. The greatest tribute to love isn't endless sadness. It's continuing to love others with an open heart. Don't let one ending convince you to stop loving. So the greatest risk. Some people after heartbreak, they never love again. After betrayal, they never trust again. After injury, they never compete again. After loss, they never dream again. But honestly, safety has never guaranteed greatness. Love requires vulnerability. And every meaningful relationship will include risk. Every meaningful dream, it includes possible disappointment. Every meaningful life includes grief. If you really understood this, would you choose a life without pain if it meant a life without love? I wouldn't. Because numbness isn't peace. It's isolation, it's separation, it's absence. See, a protected heart rarely becomes a fulfilled one. So take a breath, a deep breath, and think about something or someone you miss. Just for now, don't push it away. Welcome it. The ache, where do you feel it? Is it in your heart? That ache exists because love existed. And what an incredible privilege. Millions of people never experienced a love deep enough. Not deep enough to create that kind of grief. And you did. Although it hurts, would you erase those memories? Just to give up to let go of the pain? Would you give up all that? I don't think so. Because pain is worth what came before it. All the moments. So honestly, if you're grieving today, I want you to hear this. You're not broken. You're not failing. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not weak. You're loving. And love always leaves fingerprints. And some fingerprints, although they look like tears, sometimes they look like gratitude. Sometimes they look like becoming the kind of person who understands another's pain without needing words. So don't rush your healing. Don't apologize for caring deeply. Don't confuse numbness with strength. Because one day, the tears become smiles. The ache becomes gratitude. and the memories become gifts. And you'll realize something remarkable. The grief actually never disappeared, but neither did the love. You simply became large enough to carry them both. Because grief is not the opposite of love, it's a continuation of it. And every ending reminds us that the beginning was so worth it. The depth of your grief reveals the depth of the courage to love. And don't measure a life by how little you hurt. Measure it by how deeply you love. Thanks for hanging out with me again today. If today's episode spoke to your heart, share it with someone who may be carrying grief in silence. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give another isn't advice. It's a reminder that they don't have to carry their pain alone. And remember, your inner advocate isn't the voice that tells you to stop feeling. It's the voice that reminds you that every tear is evidence that you had the courage to love deeply. Keep loving, keep living, keep showing up. Because the greatest lives are not the ones we avoid. Not the ones that avoid heartbreak. They're the ones that love so fully that even after loss, they choose to love again.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Inner Advocate, a podcast by Kimen Peterson, formerly Conversations with Kimen. If you found value in today's episode, please follow, like, and share the podcast with someone who you think may benefit from it. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and connect on Instagram at your_inner_advocate. Until next time, keep listening to and developing your inner advocate.